Mario Kart Wii is a great game, my second favourite Mario Kart, only behind 8 Deluxe. It's the first in the series which I played, and while I don't play it now, mainly because I've never owned a Wii, it will always hold a special place for me. With that said, I've decided to rank all the tracks, Nitro and Retro. Mario Kart Wii player and fellow YouTuber Delta Gaming will be joining us in this video, giving opinions on some of the tracks as well. So, without further ado, let's head straight into the rankings. Retro tracks from Super Mario Kart often don't rank very highly for me, usually due to a lack of verticality, and there isn't really any exception with this track. It's really generic, but to be fair, for the worst course in the game, it's not that bad. In fact, I'd just say it's pretty average and basic. There are just so many way better tracks out there.
All Mario Kart games begin with a basic circuit track to get you used to the game, and Wii is no exception. While the Luigi theme makes it more interesting, then they could have done more with this theme, and the gameplay isn't anything spectacular. There's an off-road ramp and some boosts at the end, but this track doesn't really show off one of the main gimmicks of Mario Kart Wii, being the trick system. It's solid as a starter track, but is nothing special.
Mario Kart DS has some of the high points in track design, be it Tick-Tock Clock or Waluigi Pinball, but unfortunately they brought back one of the more mediocre courses for Mario Kart Wii, being Desert Hills. The first half is incredibly generic and basic, but the second half is actually really good for racers at the back to catch up, making this not really much of a fun-running track. Mario Circuit tracks appear in every Mario Kart game, there's even 4 in Super Mario Kart, and they're usually pretty basic. Sadly, Wii's Mario Circuit is one of the most basic of them all, be it basically just a figure-8 loop. While it is visually pleasing, the track design isn't especially good or memorable, hence its low rank. In Mario Kart 64, we don't have circuits, that's why they compensated for that and made Mario Kart Super Circuit just after. Instead, we have raceways to stand in for circuits. You get Luigi Raceway, remade in 7, Royal Raceway, remade in Mario Kart 8, and in my opinion the best of the 3, and the one remade in Wii, Mario Raceway. Honestly, I don't have too much to say about this one other than it's pretty basic, but the reason it's ranked as high as it is mainly due to the massive pipe at the end, which you can trick off with.
SNES Ghost Rally 2. Being Mario Kart Wii's only ghost track, this one isn't frightfully interesting. However, the flat track design was present in all of the SNES tracks, so this can be excused. There is a jump at the end, and you can cross a gap with a mushroom, but there isn't too much else going on. There aren't even any boos on the track, as they just watch from a distance. The sides of the track do fall when you touch them, but crashing into the side slows you down anyway, so this isn't too challenging. Overall, this does have some interesting parts, but I would like to see a more interesting ghost track than this.
Mario Kart Super Circuit followed up on the Koopa Beaches and Koopa Troopa Beach with a beach track that finally wasn't owned by Koopa Troopa, this time next to Shy Guy pirate ships. The main gimmick of this track is that the Shy Guys fire cannonballs at you, which I think is really fun. However, due to its lack of verticality, with it being a Super Circuit track and all, it isn't especially interesting, making it the final course for me in the C tier.
GCN Mario Circuit. This is a solid track that I do think is better than Wii's, but is still just a simple starter course. That being said, it is really good with a tunnel, a bumpy section near the end, and some enemies including a piranha plant and a chain jump to add some challenge to the course. The music here is my personal favourite of the circuit themes and goes greatly with the course itself. This is a great circuit track, but not very interesting pick for a retro track.
This is my guilty pleasure. Maybe it's just nostalgia speaking, but Yoshi Falls was always one of the tracks I remember playing for hours at a time. This is the better baby park, fight me on that. This is also 10 times better than Luigi Circuit too. Some could say it even tops every Rainbow Road in the series. Okay, I'm restraining myself putting it here in the lower end of B tier, unlike Moo Moo Meadows as a retro track in 8 Deluxe. Seriously though, Yoshi Falls kinda gets bad rap, and I guess I can see why, but it will remain special to me, mostly due to nostalgia.
N64 Sherbet Land. Not to be confused with the Sherbet Land in Mario Kart Double Dash, this is a decent snow-themed track with the main gimmick being the slippery track. This can be annoying, but is unique and can be combined with the penguins and cave, making for an interesting driving experience. The course is still fairly bland and can be annoying, but is cool.
Besides maybe Cheap Beach, Peach Beach is probably my favourite beach theme track in the whole series. I can imagine it being remade in the booster pack, as there is room for tons of underwater sections which would be cool, and also to bring back the pipe portal. If that portal was in the Wii version, then maybe this would be higher. But the simplicity of this track combined with its charm make it really fun to play. Grumble Volcano is like Marmite, either you love it or you hate it. This is the impression I've gotten off of basically every Mario Kart Wii ranking video I've watched, but plain and simple, I think this course is just a fairly solid B tier track. There's a lot to enjoy, the general theme of the track is interesting, the road falling apart lap after lap is a great gimmick, and of course, the famous ultra shortcut really makes this track great, and I actually kinda prefer the Wii version for that reason alone, but compared to some of the other tracks in this list, you can probably understand why this wasn't ranked higher. For me, the highlight of Wii's Daisy Circuit is the music. For some reason it's just really nostalgic, probably more so than any other on this list. As well as that, the track design is pretty solid too, with a cool shortcut near the beginning where you can climb some stairs. In a remake, I can imagine a glider being put there, but I digress. You can also drive on the pavement near the end of the lap, which is a fun detail as well.
GBA Bowser's Castle 3. In spite of this track being mainly flat, This version of Bowser's Castle has some interesting gameplay sections with ramps, sharp turns, laugh levels, and many thwomps all throughout the course. There's also an ultra shortcut, which you can do without too much difficulty. Although the decoration is minimal, the gameplay makes up for it, making this an interesting course to play.
Desert track in the Special Cup? Ew, no way. Just get out of here if you think that's a valid choice. If you want my honest opinion on Dry Dry Ruins, one part of it that really gets me mad is the fact that it's probably the reason that Bone Dry Dunes is in the Special Cup in Mario Kart 8, and you probably know my feelings towards that track, and also probably the Special Cup in general in Mario Kart 8. But apart from that, Dry Dry Ruins is easily the best desert track in the series, even beating out Shy Guy Bazaar. Similar to Grumble Volcano, the laps change as you go on, which is a cool detail. And also there are some great shortcuts here too, making this not much of a front-running track, similar to Desert Hills. We haven't been able to go inside Peach's castle much in Mario Kart, but the next best thing is our gardens. A retro track from Mario Kart DS, this didn't change much in the remake, but to be honest it didn't really need much updating. This is just a generally fun track, and it's unfortunate that it didn't crack the top half of this list. Remember when Mario Kart used to have retro Bowser's Castle tracks? Well, the Wii version has 3 Bowser's Castles in total, one being the Nitro, another being the GBA that Delta talked about earlier, and the better of the 2 retro tracks in my opinion being the Mario Kart 64 version. This is one of the better Bowser's Castle tracks in general, with great music as well. The thwomps in this one are ruthless and will track you down and squish you. The whole theme of this one is just super cool, and I love the shortcuts here too. Overall, base track.
N64's DK Jungle Parkway. Something about the sunset, lush forest, and relaxing music gives this track a relaxing feel that's just nice to drive on. With a cave section at the end, a tour boat cruising along the river, and winding turns to make this one of the most interesting retro tracks here. Overall, this is a solid course with great music.
Delfino Square is definitely one of the best retro tracks in Mario Kart Wii. Like Yoshi Falls, I remember playing this one a lot, and it sticks out to me well because of it. The whole setting of this track is great, and the split paths are cool in this one too. You don't really get many split paths in Mario Kart Wii, so it's fun to see them here. Of course, I can't go without mentioning the drawbridge, which is a great detail. I am so sorry for only having this in 13th place. While it's common knowledge that the retro version in Mario Kart 8 is better, there is no doubt in my mind that the original Moo Moo Meadows is still a great track, almost cracking A tier. It's short and charming, and the cows coming onto the road is a really fun detail. This easily beats Moo Moo Farm and is quite possibly the most underrated track in Mario Kart Wii. Our first track in A tier is of course the fan favourite Double Dash track, Waluigi Stadium. This also ranks as my second favourite retro track in Mario Kart Wii, and for good reason. This was improved a ton in Mario Kart Wii with great sections for tricking and of course half pipes. I don't have too much to say about this one other than it's really fun and probably my favourite stadium track in the whole series.
Wario's Goldmine. This is such a unique concept for a track which is definitely one of the more challenging ones, with steep slopes and sharp turns with few guardrails, and many of the minecarts trying to knock you off the track. The music goes very well with the level and the theme is done perfectly. The remake in Mario Kart 8 is great but definitely easier, and I think that this is a really creative and fun track overall.
And here's the medal for the undisputed best retro track in Mario Kart Wii, and one of the best in Double Dash. While it's not DK's best track, even in Wii, it sure manages to be super fun all around and is quite a lot of people's favourite track in the game. DK Mountain really is something. It's easily replayable and rarely gets boring. You start off coming at a barrel cannon, and it's all downhill from there, in a good way. Sadly, you can't trick off the mountain itself, but everything else is just amazing about this track and it deserves its spot in A tier. Wii's version of Bowser's Castle is easily the best in the series, even ahead of Double Dash's. It's just such an amazing track for so many reasons. First of all, you check off a broken bridge into Bowser's mouth, but then you go through a hallway which makes you feel like you spent way too long at the bar. After some winding corridors, you get to the best part, a half-pipe section where a giant Bowser hurls fireballs at you. There's a cool ultra shortcut, and finally, a section with geysers which you can trick off of. I hope Nintendo makes more Bowser's Castle tracks like this, as in my opinion the Mario Kart 8 version wasn't nearly as good, or even bring this back in the booster pack, who knows. Either you love it or you love it. Mushroom Gorge was brought back in 7 and I sure do hope they revive it for 8 as well. A fan favourite, this is really the only mushroom themed track in the series, unless you count the Toad tracks. You bounce off giant mushrooms, then enter the real gorge where you can take one of 2 paths. This map is basically the heaven of ultra shortcuts, especially in 400cc. Overall, this deserves all the praise it gets, and that's why it ranks in A tier for me, and almost cracks the top 7.
Moonview Highway. Wii's rendition of a road track is definitely one of the best and just feels really intense, with the fast moving cars, narrow winding roads at the beginning, and the vehicles changing lanes later on. The bomb cars are a cool throwback to Mario Kart Double Dash and add extra challenge to the course. Although the city portion of the track is more empty, it looks amazing and the night theme works wonders for this track. I think this is an amazing course and a worthy addition to the Special Cup.
I should have probably said this in my section about Mushroom Gorge, but the Mushroom Cup in Mario Kart Wii is probably the best in the series. Topping it off is of course its final track, Toad's Factory. This is a phenomenal track, almost cracking S tier. Who knew a track themed after a literal factory would end up being one of the best in the game? While the track design is kind of like a box, there are just so many shortcuts which make the layout feel less like this. My personal favourite section is the part with mud at the end, and a cool detail about this track is that's where item boxes are made, making this probably the home of Mario Kart. The final A tier track on this list, and the undisputed best Donkey Kong themed track in the series, DK Summit, is DK Mountain on steroids. First of all, just like its Double Dash counterpart, you start off going through a barrel cannon. There's then a massive trickable section, which was later copied in Mario Kart 8's Mount Wario. There's then a cool shortcut section, followed by the highlight, a massive half-pipe section with Shy Guys snowboarding alongside you. This is just such a fun track, and definitely deserves to be in the top 5 of this list.
Koopa Cape. This track is so fun to play and manages to merge so many different sections into one amazing course. You start off by driving around the rocky coastline and dodge some Goombas, before heading to the river portion of the course with giant Koopa shells and rushing water. Then you ride down a waterfall and go through an epic underwater tube, watching eels outside and dodging rotating electrical pylons that shrink you down, all while rushing through the flowing water. This track is fantastic, really creative and ahead of its time with the water sections, and is really fun to play on. This is a worthy track for S tier in my opinion.
For some reason, I never remember playing Maple Treeway, but I do play Wildwoods a ton in Mario Kart 8. It's one of my favourite tracks, and part of that is due to the really creative setting. We'll throw that out the window because a remake of Maple Treeway in Anti-Gravity could be one of the best tracks in A Deluxe. With all that said, the Nitro Maple Treeway in Mario Kart Wii is amazing. The beginning shortcut is cool, then you get shot out of a cannon just like in the DK levels. There's also a cool feature where you can drive through leaf piles which occasionally have items. So much happens in this track which makes it really crazy and most of all, heaps of fun to play. Maple Treeway for the win. Mario Kart Wii has possibly the most original track in all of the series. You know it, you love it. Moo Moo Meadows, but I already talked about that one, maybe I should go on to Coconut more. This one's been remade in literally every single Mario Kart game after this, and for good reason. The escalators make for great sections, the metal cheese graters are cool drift sections, and of course, the Miis and the cars are such a fun challenge, which should have been in the Booster Course remake. I will never forgive you, Nintendo! You know how I said Coconut Mall was Mario Kart's most original track? Well, Wii's Rainbow Road is easily the most creative. I know the consensus is that Mario Kart 7's Rainbow Road is the best, but I disagree entirely. 7 is still an S tier 10 out of 10 track, but come on, it's Wii Rainbow Road, with the most wacky track design of any track of all time. This is probably the hardest track in the series too. I came back to this track recently and I fell off more times in that one game than probably the amount of times I've ever fallen off in any 8 Deluxe track ever. With all that said, it completely deserves the #1 spot on this list and the best Rainbow Road track. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribe to Delta Gaming.